يا صباح الفل، ازيكم عاملين ايه؟ How are you all doing guys? Hope you're doing fantastic. Welcome again to a new خمسة مع رمضان video and thank you for joining our little journeys for not only learning Arabic Masri but enjoying it. Today inshallah we'll try to answer a very important and common question for anyone thinking to learn Arabic. What are the Arabic dialects? Which one should I learn? To try to answer those questions, I'll split the episode into three main parts. The first one will be quick facts about Arabic in general, the Arabic language. The second one, what are the major Arabic dialects? And the third part will be, if I want to learn Arabic, where should I start from? And since it will be a little bit long video, I'll try my best to give you little new information, maybe you never heard them before. So watch it till the end and جاهزين؟ يلا بينا! I'm sure you already know that there's a lot of countries speak Arabic. There are exactly 22 countries which they consist what they call it the Arabic League. However, Arabic is an official language in 26 countries, even if it's not the main official language, but it's still official in the constitution. And the total number of the people who speak Arabic is over 400 millions. They are a lot. So this number puts Arabic in the list of the top 5 most spoken languages on this globe. Out of you know how many? More than 7,000 live languages by today, 2020. Which also makes Arabic one of the 6 official languages of the United Nations. This is plus so many other important information. I'm not gonna mention it just for the time. But long story short, it is very vital, important and used language. Also, it's very beautiful and poetic language to learn. So by considering learning Arabic, you're on the right track. Now let's go to a very important part. What are the Arabic accents? How many accents? How many dialects? To answer this question, we have to take a quick helicopter view over the geography of the Arabic map. Can also be a drone view, whichever one you like. Right, before we start, you have to know how to call Arabic in Arabic. It is Al-Arabiya. Al-Arabiya. There is Ain in the middle, so be careful. So Al-Arabiya, or the full name Al-Lugha Al-Arabiya. Lugha means the language. So Al-Lugha Al-Arabiya, the Arabic language. The people usually shortcut it as just Arabi. Arabi, again with Ain. So khalas, from today, since you're starting to learn, no more Arabic, it's Arabi or Al-Lugha Al-Arabiya. And now we'll be taking very important terminology. I really recommend that you know them because they are very important. Right, the name of the official language, the standard language in Arabic is Fusha. Fusha or Al-Fusha. So that means the standard Arabic language, it's called Al-Lugha Al-Arabiya Al-Fusha, which is in some places they call it Modern Standard Arabic or MSA as an acronym. And let's pause here for a second. I do really recommend that you don't use this term, Modern Standard Arabic or MSA or whatever. The reason is that actually this term doesn't exist in Arabic at all, as we agreed. We have Arabic, Al-Lugha Al-Arabiya, Al-Lugha Al-Arabiya Al-Fusha, which is very important because if you're trying to learn the language, you're learning the language, this language, not the translation of this language, you know what I mean? Seriously, if you go and ask any normal Arabic person in the street, you ask even my own father about what's modern standard Arabic, they will not really know what you're talking about. Arabic is Arabic, Al-Lugha Al-Arabiya. There is no such thing in Arabic for like modern or old or whatever. So that's why it's very, very important. My recommendation, just use it the whole time as Fusha. Fusha, that's the standard language. So since now we know that Fusha is the standard or official language, where can I find this language? I can find it in the newspapers, in the news channels, in the books, in the Quran al-Karim, for example, the Holy Quran. And here I'd like to pause and tell you another very important hint. Because some people might give you the impression that Fusha, it is kind of an old language, it's not used anymore, no one using it, which is completely wrong. This is very far away from being true. Because Fusha, we literally use it every single day. However, listen to this, it's more heard and read language because as I explained to you, it's kind of an official language. So for example, I read it when I have a book, when I have the newspapers, when I watch the news, etc., etc. But when the people speak in their daily language, through over the years, this language got simplified a little bit, which caused, instead of Fusha, the official language, we have kind of 4 major Arabic dialects. And here also I'd like to take a pause for my third hint that I'd like to tell you. Last pause, promise. That if you're wondering, oh my god, how come 22 or 26 countries and you have only 4 dialects? This is, as I said, the major dialects, because definitely inside even each of them, inside even each country, there is so many other small dialects, definitely. For example, the people in the south of Egypt, they speak Saidi dialect. Al-Qahira, the capital, they have their own dialect. Alexandria, they have some differences, and so on. Not even as big as in Egypt, in smaller communities. For example, in my previous job, with time I could realize that there's few differences between the accent, for example, in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Al Giwan, Al Ain, Al Musaffah, or Lebanon, for example. The accent in Beirut is different than Jabal Lubnan, than the people from Al Daya. Now let's go and take a closer look about those 4 major dialects in Arabic. The first major dialect is called Kaliji, which is from the word Al-Khalij. Al-Khalij means the Gulf, which is simply the countries by the Gulf, as you see here. And again, as I told you, it's very recommended that you remember those vocabulary. They're so important. So don't say the Gulf dialect, say Khaliji. And the countries that they speak this Khaliji Arabic, by the way, I'll try to say the names of the countries in Arabic just to be familiar with them. So they are Al-Iraq, Al-Kuwait, Al-Bahrain, Qatar, Al-Imarat or Al-Imarat Al-Arabiya Al-Muttahida, Oman or Sultanate Oman, Al-Yaman, and Al-Saudiya or Al-Mamlaka Al-Arabiya Al-Saudiya. So as you see here, they're all close to Al-Khalij, the Gulf. That's why it makes sense the accent or even the person from here will be called Khaliji. And as I just explained to you, definitely they have differences. Even inside the same country, there are slight differences, but they are mainly in the same category, in the same family of Khaliji dialect. You know what I mean? The second major dialect in Arabic, we call it Shami, which they call it in English the Levantine dialect, but as we agreed, it's better to know it as Shami, the Shami Arabic, because simply all of this area in the past used to be called Bilad al-Sham, the countries of al-Sham. And the countries that they speak Shami Arabic, Syria, Lebanon, Al-Urdun, Palestine. Now let's cross Sinai Desert and move to Africa to have our third major Arabic dialect, which is Masri, very important word, which means Egyptian, either a person or a dialect or any Egyptian thing. To let you know, nothing in Arabic called Egypt or Egyptian. Egypt is a Greek word, which we'll be talking about inshallah in details in another video. And only Masr, Egypt, speak this dialect. And our fourth major dialect in Arabic is called Maghribi. And if you know that Maghribi is one of the words that means Western or has something to do with the West, it will make sense to you as you see here on the map that they are in the very west in the Arabic world, and just afterwards is the ocean. And just a quick hint about this word Maghribi, it can mean 2 things, because the name of the country Morocco in Arabic is Al-Maghrib, and Maghribi might mean Moroccan, the person from Morocco. Plus, as I told you, originally the word itself has something to do with the West in general. So that means if I speak about a country, just a country, and I say Maghribi, that means a Moroccan person, for example. But linguistic-wise, when I speak about a certain dialect, even a certain geographical area, when I say Maghribi, so in this case, Maghribi will mean this whole region, which usually starts from Libya, or even some people consider it from the Egyptian Western Desert, which is usually referring to the historical Amazigh area. So the countries that they speak Maghribi are Tunis, Aljazair, Al-Maghrib. The conclusion for this point, because as I said, the terminology is very important. I have Fusha or Al-Lugha Al-Arabiyya Al-Fusha, the standard official language, and I have 4 major dialects, which are Khaliji, Shami, Masri, and Maghribi. I'd like to tell you 2 final hints before we close this dialect map. Number 1, if you're wondering, okay, Mohammed, what about some other countries we didn't mention, like Sudan, like Libya? As we agreed, every country has their own dialect. Even inside the country, there's so many dialects. So that means Sudanese, they have their dialect. Libya, they have their dialect. As I mentioned, those were the 4 major ones. Plus also some countries you'll find them kind of between. So let's say Libya, the western part you'll find their dialect very close to Tunisian dialect. The eastern part you'll find it very close to Egyptian. So you know what I mean. And the second important note, and by the way I'm not saying so because I'm Egyptian, but if you're wondering, okay Muhammad, which one is the most famous dialect, for example, the answer will be straight away Masri, the Egyptian dialect. And this is, by the way, not, for example, because the most correct pronunciation or the closest to Fusha, to the standard, not at all. I'm very honest with my people. However, Masri is the most famous Arabic dialect for three main reasons. Number one, and the big portion for it, is the media. So simply the most famous movies, songs, TV shows, series, even you'll find one of the nicknames of Cairo is Hollywood of the Middle East, because majority of the cinema and media production are there in Cairo. That's why it's very, very normal and common to find, for example, a singer from the Gulf or from Lebanon or from Morocco. They are having a lot of songs in their albums in Egyptian dialect, or even actors that they act in Egyptian movies with Egyptian accent and they are, let's say, from Tunisia or from somewhere else. That's very normal for us. Now it makes sense, since everyone in the Arabic world, since their childhood, they are used to watch Egyptian movies and Egyptian shows, became very, very popular accents, especially that majority of those movies are comedy. So that's number one, and as I said, the big portion is the media. The second main reason why Egyptian is very popular is the population, of course. For example, Egypt now, we are in 2020, already crossed 100 million people in population. So imagine Egypt alone is close to 1/3 of the Arabic population. So that means one country is almost half of the population and the rest of the 21 countries are just the other half. So makes sense. And the third major reason why Egyptian is the most popular is because of the history. As we all know, Egypt is a very old country. It's actually the oldest civilization in the world. So because of the location and the history of Egypt makes it always in history a hub point in the region. In history, even whenever you read about it in the Pharaoh's time, and in the Christianity time, it was a hub in Alexandria, even in the Islamic era, and even in the current era as well. And that was it for today about the major Arabic dialects. Be careful, there will still be a part 2 about how to start, which dialect should you learn. Until then, stay awesome and always remember, irada is the key. Salam.